tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, just you've been working with Michael Joy for over 10 years. At this point, almost 15 years. You've known him for...
Yeah, I've known him since, I would say, maybe even before 2008.
Sure.
But I know for a fact that we started working together.
Oh, okay. And how did you find him? Was it just through...
Well, through a mutual friend, Jimmy McMillan.
Oh, yeah, Jimmy.
So Jimmy was my pastry chef.
Gotcha.
And Jimmy went on to do some competitions at school.
Yeah, Chicago Restaurant Pastry Competition.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I was there for that.
So, yeah.
So I first met Curtis Duffy at Jimmy McMillan's birthday party at his house. And Jimmy was his pastry chef, Curtis's pastry chef at the Peninsula. And I just saw Curtis there. And then shortly thereafter, we had talked a bit, and Curtis was like, oh, why don't you come over to the Peninsula? And I think he made us something nice at that restaurant. And I remember going to that huge hotel, and there was this tiny, tiny kitchen. And I was like, Jimmy, I'm like, what's up with this? You got this samurai, and he's locked in a 10 by 10 dance floor. Jimmy's like, Curtis has plans, but I can't tell you. So I'm like, okay. And then time passes. He opens his first restaurant. And then we started talking after the CRPC, Chicago Restaurant Pastry Competition. And Curtis was, I think, the lead judge. What was terrific about that is the event was over 3 days. Part of the event was for the sponsors. Jimmy and his wife had made these beautiful sponsored dinners. It was terrific. And we had this back patio at the house, it was a house, but at the studio in Oak Park. Julie at the time had prepared these chicken kebabs. And she's like, okay, these are ready. Curtis was outside, he was ready to grill them up, and he had just showed up, and we were playing this joke on him. And we'd come out and say, oh, Curtis, these are the kebabs Julie needs. Please get these going. And he's like, okay. And he's in the outdoor kitchen. He's like, where's the grill I'm supposed to use? And there's a big grill next to him, and we go, oh, sorry, man, that's broken. And so Jimmy came out with a little like George Foreman grill, like about this big, and he's got the plate of kebabs and people, and he looks, and he's like, you could see in his eyes, he's like, what the fudge? But what came out of his mouth was, well, then we better get started. And I'm like, this guy is kung fu, right? We threw drama at him, and he absorbed it like a soldier. And then we're like, no, we're just messing with you. And he's like, I was worried I was going to be out here all night grilling these, serving one at a time. So I knew from that point that this guy was classy and humble at the same time, because he was there. He didn't put any pressure on his friend Jimmy. And he's just like, I'm here, let's do it.
Actually, I knew Michael before then, because that's where the conversation sparked up for the mold, the actual sleeve mold that we did, the ice sleeve mold. It didn't dawn on me until us just engaging in conversation, like, who can make it?
Sure.
And then I'm like, wait a second, you guys could probably make it. Mike was like, yeah, absolutely.
All these showpiece molds and little plated dessert molds.
But it didn't click until I was there.
I think they did CRPC 3 years, and so I had time with Curtis, and he would come to the studio in Oak Park, and we'd talk about projects. And he had this one project that he said he wanted to complete for, gosh, I don't know, it was like 7, 8 years. I don't know, a long time for a chef to hold this vision. And it was a vision of this very delicate ice sleeve that he wanted to create this reservoir for a particular plating that he wanted. I don't remember what it was. And it was, I think, the most challenging piece at the time that I had molded, because of a variety of technical reasons to get this ice sleeve off, and off this piece of silicone, and we'll show you pictures. But we got it done, and I remember that piece ended up on the cover of a magazine.
Well, it's certainly one of the more unusual projects we've ever done, but I think you're one of the more unusual chefs that we've ever come into contact with too.
In a positive way, yes.
Oh yeah, 100%, absolutely. Like I said, even when we get to work together today, it's a ray of just joy for me, because it's so, I know it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be engaging, and the end result, I can trust, is going to be absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, well, I think it's important that from your perspective, you're able to see the chef's vision, which you guys always do. You always nail, like, understand how, I guess, the end result should be.
Right.
Which is important. But then on the flip side, if they're not taking it home, like you just said, it's a fail.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys always crush it on that side with, just understanding the little pieces that make everything work for us.
Right.
we have a vision, but sometimes it's hard to articulate, how to get it to that point.
Right. And it takes that experience of, well, hey, working with somebody like you, you're able to articulate and explain what you're doing in a more simple way. Some chefs just have no idea. Now we have, of course, the experience to figure out what they're trying to say without them saying it.
Yeah.
Sure. But yeah, it's a comprehensive, collaboration, just like to understand the aesthetics and the kind of design targets, but as well as how are you using them in your kitchen?
Yeah.
That's a big thing that we really try to focus on.
Yeah, the overall functionality, like how easy is it for that chef to use it every single day?
Right. Otherwise, it's just not practical to have a mold in the kitchen. I mean,
yeah. Right. Otherwise, it just you maybe use it once or twice and then it goes away. But if it's something that you can use over and over, and then even apply it from sweet to savory, cold to hot, I think that's also so important as well for our world.
Sure, it's
being able to take something that was maybe made to be frozen, but then apply it to a warm technique. Have that interchangeability is amazing.
That creative flexibility, you just don't see it out there, except for very few people, and you're one of them.
In this unique place, in this amazing place, where does your creativity and ideas for new food plates, which all of them look exceptional and all of them look tasty and delicious, where does the creativity come from? Where do you get that inspiration?
Sure. A lot of it for me solely relies on the ingredient, the product itself. Things that are coming from the ground, things that are available at our fingertips. It always starts with the idea of the sole ingredient. What is it going to be? So, for instance, if we had, you saw the white asparagus today, coming from Belgium, and we're able to get that. We usually get that every single year, but for me, it's I don't want to serve it the same way we did last year. So, how do we create a dish around that one ingredient? And it starts on paper, but then we conceptualize everything down on paper and it looks fantastic and great, and you can imagine what the flavors would taste like. But then when the ingredient actually gets here, that's when the process starts, because having that ingredient in hand and then starting to cook it in different ways, maybe keeping it raw but shaping it to raw pieces differently, then
So much you made out of what yesterday, and the corn was made in so many textures and so many different forms.
Sure.
I would never have imagined that could be placed on the plate in so many different.
Yeah. Well, I think my responsibility is to give the guests something that's familiar, right? We have to keep that line of familiarity throughout the meal, but it's also my responsibility as a chef to give you something maybe you haven't seen, or maybe you haven't flavor-wise experienced. And I think that's what keeps our cuisine different and unique than most, is because that familiarity stays within each course, but then we try to add something, a little bit more exciting. So if corn was the dish we're talking about, then how do we utilize corn in every fashion, in terms of how do we utilize, the stalk, the husk, the silk, the corn cobs, the corn itself, the sprouts, the flowers. Like, try to utilize everything about that ingredient. Fennel, the same way, where we use the bulb, the stalk, the fronds, the flowers, the seeds. We can showcase every one of those things, and we're not adding more to the dish in terms of flavor. It's just fennel or corn. That's kind of where it starts, but all that really takes place is once we have that ingredient in hands, and then everything on paper, sometimes it stays true, but most of the time it always changes from what's on paper.
So how much of that in the kitchen is pre-planned, and how much is free creative spirit of yours?
Well, that's the beauty of what I do, is like I get to play with food all day, so we can be very meticulous with writing things down before we get that ingredient, but it all kind of goes to the side once that ingredient's in, because I can't tell you how many times I've had something in my fingers and I've started, whether it's peeling it or shaping it or just cutting it, that something sparks and it changes the way that I think about that ingredient or that dish completely.
On the go.
In the moment. And then we'll start to change it and go in that direction and see where that takes us. So it might be completely separate from what was on paper. And that's okay too. We have to allow us to feel that and be that in the moment and put no restrictions on the way we think about food.
What makes you feel creatively free, right? Is it the kitchen? Is it your team?
You know, I think now at my age, I think it is time. I think it's having the confidence in the choices you make. I think it's time in terms of how long I've been cooking. I think a lot of it has to do with also the team allowing me to, you know, create something knowing that when it goes on the menu, we can be consistent about it and not think that, well, if I'm the only one that can do this, then I can't put that dish on the menu because I would have to be here every single night, and that limits how we grow as a business. So a team plays a huge part in all of that.
Silicone molds liberated a certain type of his creative thought that he wasn't able to express before. I don't think he needed it. I think it was just like another like secret wizard trick that he could have. And he could take those ideas and fit them into his team, because although he could do anything he wanted, his team, he had to make it efficient and scalable. And so this always brings a certain threshold to creative ideas.
Did you ever have that feeling that it's only me that can do it?
I have that feeling a lot, but I have to constantly remind myself that if I don't trust in the staff and my right-hand guy to constantly execute it the way I would see it every day, then we don't get better as a restaurant, and the model of this restaurant needs to be better every single day.
But the thing that I liked most about Curtis is, as busy as this guy is, and as much stressful impact that a chef like him has taken over the years for a variety of reasons, he stays chill and very, very modest. But I've worked with other chefs who just weren't like that. They were very sloppy with their emotions. And Curtis was like, love, 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 you know? Tough love, but love, love, love. I enjoyed seeing the other visual expressions of his artistry when he was building these restaurants and the interior design. Talk about, there's the skill of being a chef, there's the skill of being a business person, and then there's the skill of working with a team in the kitchen, and then there's this secret skill of working with a team of builders, investors, designers, real estate, all of the non-flavor related things. And the person that can do those, and with this over here, the building stuff, comes the money stuff. That's a different mindset that can take all of those things and still be a chef, not only a businessman. This man does not think small. I mean, he works on a plate, but he doesn't think small.